Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome you to the City Council meeting for April 28, 2014. The invocation will be given by Bishop Thomas Halsey, followed by the pledge to our nation's flag, led by Councilman Dixon.
Let us pray. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for once again coming into our City Council meeting. We pray for strength, wisdom, and knowledge. We ask, God, that you bless the family members of each and every one that are here, that you strengthen them, protect them, that our community and our city might grow in wisdom and in grace. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, gentlemen. Council, you have before you this evening's agenda. Are there any additions or deletions?
If not, I'll move for approval as presented.
Second. Motion by Mr. Hutchison, second by Mr. Hare to approve it as submitted. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Council passes unanimously. Now have before us the consent agenda. Those items on the council agenda that are considered routine and non-controversial are marked with an asterisk and will be acted upon by a single roll call vote of the council. There will be no separate discussion of the items unless the council so requests, in which event the matter shall be removed from the consent agenda and considered as a separate item. What's the pleasure of council?
Move for acceptance.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Hare, second by Mrs. Williams. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Burton? Yes. Mr. Slavin?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams? Yes. Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Yes. Passes unanimously. Item number 2 on the agenda this evening is correspondence from Mayor Carlton E. Carey, Sr. I will read this into the record. It is a letter dated April 25th, 2014, addressed to Tracy McDowell, City Clerk of the City of Dover. Dear Mrs. McDowell, after 22 years of service in city government, 5 years as a civilian in the Utility Committee, 10 years on City Council, and near almost 7 years as Mayor of the City of Dover, I have decided that it's time to retire. I would like to thank all the employees of the City of Dover for all the great work that they do every day. What they do for our citizens is very commendable, and they should be recognized for all their hard work. It has been a pleasure, an honor, and privilege to work with the men and women of the Dover Police Department. The Dover Police Department is #1 in the country as far as I am concerned. With all their outstanding work, what they do is protect the citizens, and it's an outstanding job. One of the greatest awards that they received is the Accreditation with Excellence Award from the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies, shortly called CALEA. This is the highest award that a police department can receive. The Dover Police Department is one of just 35 agencies nationwide to receive this prestigious award. To all the committee members for the City of Dover, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for all that you have done volunteering to make this city a greater place for our families to live. To the citizens of Dover, it has been an honor to serve you over the last 22 years, and I want to thank you for all the support that I have received over the years. With this letter, it's my official resignation as Mayor of the City of Dover. The last official day, Monday, April 28, 2014, at 8 a.m. And it's signed sincerely, Carlton E. Carey, Sr., Mayor of the City of Dover. On behalf of Council, I want to say we accept this resignation with saddened hearts. None of us begin our career in public service with anything but good intentions in our minds and in our hearts, and we hope in some small way we make a contribution to the city that we live in, no matter what public office we try to attain. I think that Carlton deserves our good wishes in his retirement, and we hope that he does enjoy his retirement with his family and he gets to do the fishing that he wants to do. That being said, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda. It's proposed resolution 2014-07, the appointment of the mayor and council president. Madam Clerk.
Council Resolution Number 2014-07, resolution appointing the vice mayor as mayor until the mayor's position is filled. Whereas Mayor Carlton E. Carey Sr., whose term expires May 11, 2015, submitted his resignation as mayor of the city of Dover effective April 28, 2014. And whereas, in accordance with Section 13 of the Charter, a special election to fill the vacancy is required no sooner than 30 days from the date of vacancy and no later than 60 days after the date of vacancy. And whereas, in accordance with the provisions of Section 15 of the Charter, the mayor's absence will be extended, in which case council shall pass a resolution appointing the vice mayor as mayor until the mayor's position is filled in accordance with Section 13, which resolution shall provide that the vice mayor shall have the right to approve council action in accordance with Section 10 hereof, in which case the vice mayor shall lose his or her vote as council person until further action is taken by council. Now therefore be it resolved by council of the city of Dover and in council met. 1. Council President and Vice Mayor David L. Bonar shall serve as mayor until the mayor's position is filled in accordance with the provisions of Section 13 of the Charter, due to the extended absence and resignation of Mayor Carlton E. Carey Sr. And during this period of time, David L. Bonar, acting as mayor, shall have the right to approve or disapprove council action in accordance with the provision of Section 10 of the Charter, in which case he shall lose his right to vote as council person until further action is taken by council. Upon the election and installation of a new mayor, Vice Mayor David L. Bonar shall return to his position as vice mayor and shall regain his vote as council person. In accordance with Section 9 of the Charter, Beverly C. Williams, the senior member of council, in terms of length of service, shall assume the duties of council president and is hereby appointed as acting vice mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Pleasure of council.
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Hutchison, seconded by Mr. Dixon for approval of the resolution. Any questions? Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do have a, if I may, have a couple questions directed to council. I do have a couple questions on the resolution and regarding to timing and the effect that it has being before the annual meeting and the election of a council president, considering that we have a provision for acting mayor. I'm wondering, would this not be more beneficial to have our annual meeting and our election of council president and then put this particular resolution through? In other words, wouldn't it be better in 2 weeks?
Well, really, that's a political question. You know, certainly there are benefits to that, but there's also the fact that the charter does not envision having a vacancy in the office of mayor, even if it is just for 2 weeks.
Do you have a secondary question, David?
Now, thank you. The next question to that regard would be, then there would be, if we did this right now, the charter requires an annual meeting and with the election of the council president. How would this resolution essentially be superseding that? Would it be basically a 2-week resolution that has to be reaffirmed at the annual meeting? I mean, the timing of this seems a lot smoother if we were to delay this 2 weeks. It seems to eliminate any possible questions or conflicts.
Well, Mr. Bonar is going to serve as mayor until a new mayor is elected and installed. As I said, the question of whether you do it tonight or 2 weeks from tonight is a political issue for council to decide.
Well, here's some practicalities. For instance, give you an example. At the annual meeting, all appointments are made. For instance, potentially, once those appointments are made for the next meeting, I mean, they're not going to be unmade. I mean, there's certain practical precedents that could be set. I mean, obviously, you could have a side agreement, of course, but you know, there are practical things when it comes to the precedent that we're setting that have concerns about.
I am aware that there is a long-standing precedent, repeated multiple times, for the council president's appointments to be delayed for at least a meeting. Right. There's no reason that couldn't be done. There's no reason that the selection of the council president could not also be delayed until this unusual interim period has concluded. But again, that's a matter for this council to decide.
Thank you, Mr. Pepper. Mr. Hare.
I think Mr. Pepper hit on what I was going to suggest is, is it possible to either, one, extend the annual meeting until which time we swear in the new mayor, because we're going to have a special election, and at that night have this annual meeting a month later, 3 weeks later, whatever time frame it is, or make this resolution effective until the next council meeting, and then we pick our council president or whoever it's going to be, and if it happens to be the same, if it happens to be Mr. Bonar, then we just leave the resolution in place. If the council president is selected as Mr. Anderson or somebody, then there'd be a new resolution, which I think extending until have the annual meeting when the new mayor's sworn in, I like. But I mean, either way, one of those two options work.
Thank you, Mr. Hare. Any other comments from members of council? Mr. Slavin.
Question for Mr. Pepper. Does the charter allow the annual meeting to be moved?
I think the charter specifies the date on which the annual meeting is to be held. It doesn't say what happens if council decides, since council has home rule powers, if you will, that for this, in the light of these circumstances, the annual meeting is going to be postponed until we have a new mayor, because these are highly unusual circumstances.
Well, then would option one apply? Could we have the annual meeting like normal and then pick the council president, and then if it's a different person that is selected, then the resolution would just change?
I don't think there's any legal impediment to that, but again, that's a political decision for this council.
We have a mayor for 2 weeks or however long until the next meeting, and then we'd pick a council president who then would become acting mayor. From that point forward, we're just changing. We're going to have 3 mayors, and of course, could have 3 mayors in the course of 2 weeks.
Well, I would remind you that since, and this is a quick observation, that I would remind you that as mayor, I would not have a vote on the council presidency at the organizational meeting. I will say, in the interest of openness, both Bev and I have discussed the council appointments. We're very comfortable with the council committees the way they're set up right now, and it's our intention to make sure that the council committees are pretty well kept as they are right now until we get until next year's organizational meeting. So we're very comfortable with the way things are going, and both Bev and I feel that and Bev, correct me if I'm wrong, that this is a very comfortable way to make a smooth and seamless transition.
I understand that. I don't have but what Mr. Pepper was saying, we have to have a mayor and we have to have an annual meeting. So if we have to have an annual meeting, then we've got to select the council president. Now is it possible to select the acting mayor to be the council president after he's done being acting mayor?
That resolution, the resolution that you're considering now, takes care of that after the selection of the new mayor. Mrs. Williams.
Having been in your position The difficulty I see if you are acting mayor and we change anything from that resolution is you wouldn't have a vote in your own reelection
That's
if
correct.
you chose to run again.
That's correct.
And
And
that would not be fair, it would seem to me.
That's correct, and I've notified members of council that I had intended to seek a term as council president.
Right.
So, any other questions on the resolution?
Well,
Mr. Hare?
it could be a moot issue if you're the only one that's seeking a term as council president.
That's correct. Any other questions on the resolution?
I think we've got a consult going on behind that.
I don't think that Mr. Bonar could be elected council president at the annual meeting because he would not then be a member of council.
Exactly.
You,
That's my
you,
point.
you could, I think, defer the election of a council president until the until after the mayor is elected and everything returns to what approaches normal.
So that's not a violation of anything.
I don't think so. Under these circumstances, I mean, I don't know that it's ever been done since 1989 when the post of council president was created. But if, for whatever reason, a candidate could not get a majority of the vote at the annual meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Persia.
I think for tonight, the way the chairs are, please the rest of the remainder of the council year, which ends May 12th. So I think we're good to vote tonight as the resolution put forward. If we have to change our mind in 2 weeks, we can readdress it then.
Thank you. Are you calling the question?
I'd love to call the question.
Question's been called. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
No.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Persa?
Yes.
Mr. Slavin?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Bonar?
Yes, motion passes 8-1. Thank you very much. Mrs. Williams, I think you have a position
Are we
to move to, and so do I.
take care of that? Make sure.
Don.
Welcome.
Okay, we are now on number four of the agenda, tribute number 2014-02, Millard F. Biddle. I would ask Mrs. Nancy Jo Lamberson, Mrs. Biddle's daughter, to join Mr. Bonar at the podium and request the city clerk read the tribute into the record.
Tribute number 2014-02, expressing sympathy and condolences upon the passing of Millard F. Biddle. Whereas the mayor and council of the city of Dover have been greatly saddened by the death of Millard F. Biddle, former councilman and businessman in the city, who passed away on March 31st, 2014. And whereas Millard F. Biddle served as councilman of the 1st District from February 9th, 1953 to February 11th, 1957, and during his tenure as councilman heard tax assessment appeals, served on the Building Commission, Hearing Committee, Fire Committee, Tree Commission, and Election Board, and dedicated his time and attention to the important functions of the city, helping to resolve the complex problems encountered. And whereas Millard F. Biddle lived a long and productive professional life in Dover, beginning his career delivering milk via horse and buggy for local dairies, subsequently selling insurance for Prudential Insurance, owning and operating Biddle's Market in the downtown Dover area, being employed as a salesman for Delaware Candy and Tobacco Company, and serving as a property assessor for Kent County for 20 years. And whereas Millard F. Biddle contributed greatly to the Dover community by supporting his wife, Hattie Mae Biddle, who co-founded, co-owned, and directed the Little School, dedicated his time and energy to volunteer work, including service on the leadership board of the People's Church of Dover, and as a tour guide at the Johnson Victrola Museum, and was an enthusiastic promoter of Delaware tourism, and the city of Dover has sustained a great loss in the death of Millard F. Biddle. Now therefore be it resolved that the mayor and council extend their deepest sympathy and condolences to the family and friends of Millard F. Biddle, and hope that they will be consoled by the memories of his exemplary life and commendable achievements. Be it further resolved that the mayor and council direct the city clerk to place this tribute in the permanent records of the city of Dover in recognition of the many contributions graciously given to the community by former Councilman Millard F. Biddle.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Nancy, there are a lot of people that have come and gone in the city over our lifetimes, but I know that Hattie Mae and Millard would be very pleased to look at this and be rewarded personally for some of the attributes that they exemplified to our city and state. Thank you very much. I will also let you know that we have a City of Dover flag that at your memorial service, the Honor Guard for the Dover Police Department will present to you in folded fashion appropriately. Thank you very much.
Thank you, too. We appreciate it.
If you'd like to make a comment, you're certainly.
Well, as you can see, some of his family members are here and friends, and we just wanted to let you know how much we deeply appreciate this honor, and it is a great honor for all of us. And if my father were here, and some of you may remember this, he would be handing all of you a Dover pin or a Delaware pin, would he not? So thank you for this honor.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Madam President.
Mayor.
I would now entertain a motion to adopt the tribute.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made by Mr. Hare and seconded by Mr. Lynn. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item number 5, public hearing, violation of the dangerous building ordinance, property located at 39 North New Street, owned by Aaron L. Cooper. On April 14, 2014, the City Council deferred this matter for 2 weeks. I'm sorry, Mr. Lynn?
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Respectfully, I would ask to be disqualified from this matter as I have a conflict.
Mrs. Townsend, I see you're already up at the podium. Would you please brief us on this item?
Sure. Again, this is property located at 39 North New Street. The case history, the property became vacant in October 2012. Electric service was disconnected. The rear of the structure was damaged by fire March 31st, 2013, and then subsequently condemned by city staff. So that's been a year since that took place. The property was registered as vacant in April of 2013, and the fee was exempted because a demolition permit application had been submitted. Unfortunately, it didn't include the required asbestos abatement certification, so we ended up having to hold on to the permit, waiting for that documentation, and then ultimately we returned the permit to the owner in October 2013. Riggs Builders has submitted plans for the demolition of the property just last Friday with a start date of June 4th. As I understand it, they have subcontracted out the asbestos abatement, and they, at this point, we're waiting on that final paperwork so we can issue the demolition permit. It's coming before you as it's fire damaged, it's unfit for habitation, general welfare, and it's an unoccupied building. This is a picture of the porch. You can see there's actually some furniture on the porch. This is from the fire that occurred, so you can see the back is pretty badly damaged. Again, this is the interior, some of the interior damage from the fire. where they had to break out the wall. This is how the house stands now, and we have been in contact with Mrs. Barrett since, I guess, the last meeting where she had requested that it be postponed. She does know that it's on this evening's agenda. I didn't see her here tonight, but like I said, they are moving forward at this point, but a lot of times it's the council action that keeps things moving forward. So we thought it was best to present it to council tonight. I'm actually meeting with Mrs. Barrett tomorrow. But the date that is in the PowerPoint is a little bit different than the date that was in the action form, because that was determined on Friday when our staff met with the demolition contractor. So we're asking that you declare the building and any accessory structures on the property dangerous, order that the property be demolished for the demolition to begin by June 4th, 2014 by the owner. And if it's not done within 10 days of that date, that then we would go forth and do the demolition and place the lien against the property as is normally done. With that, I would take any questions.
Any questions from Mrs. Townsend? Seeing none, I declare the public hearing open. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of declaring this property dangerous? Again, is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of declaring this property dangerous? Seeing no one, is there anyone who would like to speak against declaring this property dangerous? Again, is there anyone who would like to speak against declaring this property dangerous? Seeing no one, I declare the public hearing closed. What is the pleasure of council?
For acceptance of staff recommendation.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the staff recommendation. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Berza?
Yes.
Mr. Slavin?
Yes.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes. Motion carries 7-1. We are now moving on to item 3B. Public hearing violation of dangerous building ordinance. Property located at 12 North New Street, owned by E.H. Pooled Investment LP. Again, Mrs. Townsend, can you please brief us on this item?
All right. I'll start by giving you first a brief overview of the demolition budget for the year. As you are aware, the demolition budget was increased due to, we brought it before the Legislative Finance and Administration Committee because we had quite a few buildings in the last year. Mrs. Mitchell did ask me today, with the $42,000 that we have remaining, are these two buildings that are before you this evening going to present an issue? At this point, I think we're in good shape, especially because I do believe that the owner of 39 North New Street will be demolishing it. And at this point, we know we're constrained by the funds that are currently in the budget, so we will not exceed our current budget allotment. So again, for the case history, we've had 14 code enforcement cases since 2002, a variety of exterior code violations, abandoned vehicles. We had to secure the vacant building, housing inspections, which are routine for rental properties. The property was registered vacant in November 2012, and it was boarded and resecured several times by city staff since November 2012. So this is one where people are getting in. So this is more of a concern in terms of safety, that, you know, when people are getting in and we know there's been a fire, that we're concerned that it is definitely more of a safety issue. It was condemned April 12, 2013 because there was a fire. And the grass has had to be ordered to be cut by the city on 2 separate occasions, which means that the city is cutting the grass. hiring contractors to cut the grass. It's been a source of neighbor complaints. The water was disconnected this past February after it was found that the water usage for the month had been 111,000 gallons, indicating that there's likely an interior water leak. We have not been in since this point in time, but that is a lot of water. So we're not certain that there's not a lot of water in the basement. There are outstanding charges in terms of vacant building fees, grass cutting, grass citations, and we have $1,400, almost $1,500 in outstanding utility fees. This one, I will let you know, I did talk to somebody last week who indicated that he had a contract to purchase the building. I let him know there were a couple of things. One, we did provide him, the clerk's office provided him with the outstanding charges due against the property. But this is one of the buildings that is a single-family home that at some point in time had been converted to a 2-unit structure. And that is no longer permitted in this district. So because of the length of time that the property's been vacant, that use cannot be restored. If any renovation to the property would need to restore it to a single-family use. So I did let that gentleman know that, and I'm not sure if that has changed his intent to purchase. I did let him know that the Board of Adjustment was an option. So again, this is coming before you. Fire damage, again, due to a fire during the time that it was vacant. It's unfit for habitation. It's a general welfare concern. There are a number of code violations, and it's an unoccupied building. This is the property from the street. The side view. You can see that there are some missing windows in the upstairs. It's boarded in the rear. That's the accessory. You can see that at some point in time, it looked like they started to do some work because there's some more current plumbing fixtures there, or you can tell that they were doing something, but that's been quite a while and the work has ceased. These are some interior photos after the fire. And like I said, we haven't been in since February when we determined that there must be some sort of a water leak. So we haven't been able to assess any damage from that. So we are bringing this forward and recommending the council declare the property, including any accessory structures on the building or on the property, dangerous. Order the property to be repaired or demolished by May 28th by the owner or equity owner at their risk. And if not completed within 10 days of that date, that staff be authorized to proceed with demolition and to recover the cost as stated in the recommendation. I take any questions?
Mr. Perza.
Is there an outstanding water bill for the 111,000 gallons?
I think that's part of the $1,400 charge, yes.
All right.
Any other questions? Seeing none, declare the public hearing open. Is there anyone who would care to step forward and speak in favor of declaring this building dangerous? Again, anyone? Is there anyone who would care to step forward to speak against declaring this building dangerous? Seeing no one, I declare the public hearing closed. What is the pleasure of council? Mr.
Recommend we
Hutchinson.
follow staff's recommendation.
Is there a second? Motion's been made by Mr. Hutchinson, seconded by Mr. Hare. Is there any discussion on the motion? Mr. Persa.
One question, is the date the same as the previous one? The same contractor we're dealing with, or is it May 28th for this one, June 4th?
It's May 28th for this one, June 4th for the other.
Any other questions? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Persa?
Yes.
Mr. Slavin?
Yes.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes, motion carries 8 to 0, I'm sorry. We're now moving on to item number 6, setting the dates for the special election. In accordance with Section 13 of the city charter, a special election must be held to fill the vacancy created by the resignation of Mayor Carlton E. Carey Sr., since the vacancy is in excess of the 6 months in duration. The position is for the mayor's seat with a term that expires on May 11th, 2015. The following dates are recommended. Date of election, Tuesday, June 17th, 2014. Filing petitions accepted April 29th, 2014 through May 20th, 2014 at 4:30 p.m. Voter registration closed on June 3rd, 2014. The oath of office at a special council meeting on June 25th, 2014, and a polling place being designated as the Dover Elks Lodge, number 1903 at 200 Salisbury Road. Does anybody have any questions about this? Mr. Hutchinson.
Just a comment. I think it's extremely important for people who are considering or looking at running for the office of the mayor of the city of Dover to keep in mind that currently it is a full-time position, and the duties and responsibilities are directly responsible to the police department. And one of the things that this council will be doing next month on May the 12th, we'll be discussing the mayor's duties and responsibilities as it relates to the police department, and we're going to consider, at least look at, to see whether or not that needs to be moved to the city manager's position. So I do think it's important that anyone who has an interest in running for the office, that the outcome of what we're going to do with the job, I don't have the answers, but it will be discussed in our next month's meeting.
Any other questions? What is the pleasure of council?
Move for acceptance of the dates.
Second.
Seconded by, motion's been made by Mr. Hare, seconded by Reverend Dixon. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Mr. President.
I think the date was announced that the mayor would take office was June 25th.
Yes.
Wednesday. Is it by design?
That's the soonest that they can be sworn in.
By charter or statute?
State law says that it can't be sooner than 7 days after the
Yeah,
result.
that's the reason it's not the next meeting.
Yes.
Got it. All right.
Any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We're now on to item 12, evaluation of proposals, the Wellhead Redevelopment Program contract. Staff recommends the awarding of a 3-year agreement with the city, option of 2 1-year extensions for the Wellhead Redevelopment multi-year contract to A.C. Schultes of Delaware, Incorporated, as per the pricing included in the bid submittal. Mr. Koenig, can you help us out and give us more information? And did I pronounce the company right?
A.C. Schultes, yes. In the packet is the action form prepared by Mrs. Duca and her staff regarding the Wellhead Redevelopment Program. The city owns and maintains 20 water production wells, and in an effort to maintain these at the highest production yields possible, we do routine maintenance on them through a third-party contractor. This has been a time, equipment, and material contract in the past, and when we have these types of contracts with the expectation that they will exceed $25,000 annually, we have come before council for approval. A request for proposal was advertised in accordance with the city's purchasing policy under RFP 14-0034PW. Only one contractor submitted a qualified proposal. That proposal was evaluated by staff regarding a number of different criteria. And based on the evaluation of staff, we are recommending awarding a 3-year agreement to A.C. Schultes of Delaware with 2 1-year extensions. The budgeted amount for fiscal year 14 is $75,000. This program escalates slightly in year 15, fiscal year 15. And in the funding source area, we've shown the history of spending on this line item. As I said before, there are 20 production wells as part of the city system. We have been inspecting them and doing whatever maintenance is required as the inspection reports detail. That is the purpose of this contract, and as indicated, staff would recommend awarding a 3-year agreement with the option of 2 one-year extensions for the wellhead redevelopment program to AC Schultes of Delaware using the pricing submitted in their bid proposal. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Slavin.
Do we have any other such service contracts, inspection contracts, where we build in a 10% escalator per fiscal year?
The escalator is on the contractor side. I can't think of one where there is a 10% escalator.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Bennett? Mr. Persa.
Is the proposal, does it have to be a 3-year agreement, or be a 1-year agreement, and be re-advertised in 1 year?
It could be a 1-year agreement if council so chooses. This is what I would call specialty work, and unfortunately there are not a lot of contractors involved in this area. Over the years, I think we've had as many as 3 or 4 contractors. We're now down to 1 in this field in the area. So only awarding a 1-year contract. Will be back in a very short period of time.
I guess I share Mr. Slavin's thoughts on the 10% escalator, given the state of the economy and retail contract increase.
I think if you look at the bid, the escalator is really related to I thought the escalator was related to the inspection component of it. Each of the 5 items are though. So it is it does apply to various components. So it applies to preliminary testing, the equipment removals, the inspections, examinations, and the hourly rates, but it does not apply to the cost of actual materials. So it's an escalator on time and labor.
Any other questions? Seeing none, what's the pleasure of council? Mr. Lynn.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Mr. Koenig, does the city manager have an idea as to whether the contractor would be willing to waive the 10% escalator?
I have not asked that question at this point, so I do not know.
Thank you.
Mr. Hare.
And you say the escalator is strictly time and labor?
The escalator, as written in item 6, applies to each of the 5 items above, and those items above are, as I said, there are pricing in the types of wells. There's pricing for like base unit wells. So it appears to apply to the inspection amounts as well as the hourly rates.
Mr. Levin.
Thank you. I would move to award the 3-year agreement to AC Schultes of Delaware, Inc., with the city option of 2 one-year extensions, specifically contingent upon their waiver of the 10% escalator.
Is there a second to that motion? Mr. Persa?
Yes.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Question.
I'm sorry, Mr. Handy.
I guess the problem that I have is maybe the 10% is a little high, but I could see if he said he's going to have a 3 or 4% in there, because if there's expenses that go up, if his employee, you know, if he incurs business expenses by insurance rates or whatever, and he's got to pay his employees some additional, I mean, I could see a 3-4% escalator in there. I would go along with something like that. I mean, I just don't think it's fair to ask someone to totally eliminate it, because sounds like he's giving us a good deal, but he's saying if he needs it, he needs something to cover his costs down the road, because it's not going to stay the same for 3 years or 5 years. There are going to be additional expenses, so I would go along with like a 3%.
Make a 3% escalator each year, 3 years to 3.
I would make that recommendation if the motion maker would agree.
Is the maker of the motion willing to amend that?
I was going to offer an amendment to the motion as well.
I would yield to Mr. Slavin.
Mr. Slade.
If the maker of the motion was amenable to it, I was going to make an amendment that we simply accept a 1-year contract on this. It allows us the option of bidding it out each of the next 4 years rather than accepting a 40% increase over the life of the contract.
My concern is that, given the response to this initial bid, I'm not sure if the waters will still be as tepid next time around.
Right.
So, accordingly, you know, what I think is likely to happen is the same company, AC Schulteis of Delaware Inc., will be the same low bidder again next year, but will have still built in the escalator that he wants. I would be more amenable to perhaps doing a 1.5% escalator for the second and third year, so that cumulatively it's a 3% over the 3-year contract. I would be willing to amend my motion to state that, of course, contingent upon whatever Mr. Koenig has to say.
Mr. Koenig.
I would request that we table this item, and I'll go back and talk to the contractor before we vote on something. We can bring it back at the next meeting.
Okay. With that in mind, Ms. Williams, I'd ask to table this.
We want to defer, not table.
Thank you.
So you're willing to defer?
Yes, thank you.
Is the seconder willing to defer also? Mr. Slade.
I just have one last question for Mr. Koenig. How many bidders do we have on this?
We only had one proposal submitted, but it went out to public advertisement.
Thank you.
Before we take a vote on this deferment, I've got a question, Mr. Koenig.
Yes.
As the sole provider, are you saying Schulteis is the sole provider?
They're the only one that bid on the contract.
Within a radius of how many miles of Dover would there be a secondary provider that we know of?
My guess is there's additional providers within 100 miles, but this is specialty work, and you have to want to do this type of work. So it's not like John's well drilling that you see out drilling home wells. This is not the type of work that they do typically. This is more of a commercial size well production operation. So there are fewer people involved in this, and when we sent out the proposals, this was the only contractor that submitted a bid or a proposal.
Do you anticipate that there would be anybody else?
I hope that at some point when the economy improves that there will be additional bidders, but in some cases, as I said, years ago, there was several bidders on this contract, but the economy seems to have ferreted out a number of competitors.
Any other questions or any other comments? Seeing none, is it a roll call? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? This matter is deferred. All right, item number 13, the authorization to extend the recycling contract, Inland Waste Solutions LLC, Inland Service Corporation. Mr. Koenig, I believe this is a 3-year contract. Could you help provide more information for us on this?
Yes, Inland Service Corporation, which is currently known as Inland Waste Solutions LLC, is our current recycling provider. In the packet tonight is the original agreement that ran through from August 1st of 2010 through July 31st of 2013. This contract was extended last year administratively because the contractor agreed to hold the pricing at the same level. So if you look at our history, year one with this vendor was $1.18 per pickup. Year two was $1.19 per pickup. Last year, or the last full year, was $1.21 of the contract. The current year is at $1.21, and the vendor is proposing to extend for an additional 3 years at $1.21 per unit, mainly because they have been successful at expanding their customer base. They're currently the provider for Kent County, and that expanded customer base has allowed them to maintain the price. This is an option for the council if they are so choose to agree to the extension. If we do not want to extend the contract, we will be out to bid on the contract with no guarantee that we would get a cheaper price.
Questions for Mr. Koenig? Mr.
Thank you.
I keep going in my mind, Alexander.
Thank you, Madam President. Quick question, do you happen to know what the county's paying right now?
The county has a combined rate, so they don't separate out the recycling from their proposal. So for the county, it includes all of waste services. We tried to get that number, but it is not identified to my knowledge.
Thank you.
Any other questions? What's the pleasure of council? Mr. Anderson.
Move to accept staff recommendation and extend the contract.
Motion's been made by Mr. Anderson, is second to the motion.
Second.
Mr. Dixon. Okay. Is there any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Persa?
Yes.
Mr. Slavin?
Yes.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes, motion carries unanimously. We are now on item number 14, the proposed resolution 2014-05, opposing House Bill 230, a Model Family Financial Protection Act. I would request that the Deputy City Solicitor, Mr. Pepper, brief us on this item.
Thank you, Madam President. This bill was introduced in January. I don't really have any comment on subchapter 1 of the bill because that really doesn't have much effect on the city of Dover. But subchapter 2 of the bill, if adopted, I believe would seriously impact the city's ability to collect property taxes and other lienable items. The threat of an involuntary sale of property to collect the debt would be withdrawn. Essentially the only sale of a property would be a mortgage foreclosure, and I don't think that's in the best interest of any local governments in the state. We took 58 properties into the monition process because they were two or more years delinquent in the taxes this year. We're going to take 10 of them to sale tomorrow. That means that we have a very high rate of collection. I believe that rate of collection would drop precipitously if we did not have the ability to use the monition method to collect our property taxes, our water, sewer, trash charges, and similar lienable items.
Any questions from Mr. Pepper? Mr. Anderson.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam President. One question that I have is there's a 2-year requirement, but are we also currently including fees and basically looking at as soon as a property second year taxes are due that we're actually considering that a 2-year delinquency?
It's my understanding that the way it's processed, there are additional collection efforts after they become 2 years delinquent before they are dropped into the monition program. And at that point, when a monition is filed, the ordinance of the City of Dover prescribes that $110 be added to the account to cover the necessary filing fee in preparation of the monition pleadings. If a VE writ, the writ to have the sheriff sell it, is filed, an additional $250 is added to the account pursuant to city ordinance.
Any other questions for Mr. Pepper? What is the pleasure of council? Mr. Lynn?
My concern with this proposal is that I believe that we're painting with far too broad a brush. I think that in lieu of a general opposition to the entire piece of legislation, what we ought to do is oppose its application to municipal governments. My concern here is that this is a good piece of legislation. It's a critical piece of consumer protection legislation that protects our consumers from financial services or businesses unilaterally changing contracts in midstream. It mandates that contracts involving financial services be in writing. It prohibits forum selection clauses, which are essentially language and form contracts that say that you have to go defend yourself in California or Nevada, even though you're a Delaware resident. It prohibits collection of consumer debt by any party not in possession of the actual original contract. It gives consumers an opportunity to settle debts, and it provides for the protection of debtors and their family. So I would be opposed to this proposal insofar as it is a broad opposition by council to the entire piece of legislation. If it is limited to opposition in its application to municipal government, that is something that I would get behind, but not the broad application that's being asked for.
And Mr. Lynn, is that in the form of a motion?
Yes. Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Mr. Perz.
I've got a question for the city solicitor. Is the resolution that was prepared deals with the section 87 subchapter 2? Is that the municipal application of this, indicating our opposition?
That's Title 9, Chapter 87, Subchapter 2 is the monition method of sale.
We're noting our objection because of that section there?
Yes, and the resolution opposes the bill as introduced and seeks to have an amendment to exempt municipal governments.
So when it goes over to the House or whoever it is in legislature, this is what's going to go, this notes our objection?
Yes.
Thank you.
If adopted.
Any other questions, Mr. Hare?
To exempt municipal governments I guess for tax purposes, I mean property taxes. You wouldn't be able to foreclose on for an electric bill because you shut the electric off after so long, but this is going to be specifically for tax purposes. Or what?
Electric items are not lienable.
Okay. So it's tax.
Subchapter 1 of the bill, which contains the beneficial purposes that Mr. Lynn identified, we don't have a position on, at least the solicitor doesn't. But it's just subchapter 2 of the bill that we believe impairs the municipal ability to collect its debts.
So his motion would cover exempting municipalities, like you just said.
As I understand it, yes.
Okay.
Mr. Pepper, for those of us who are not attorneys, not married to attorneys, and don't know paralegals, would you please explain munition sale?
The munition sale is a method by which taxes primarily and other items that are added to the tax bill can be collected in an expeditious form. It's somewhat of a summary proceeding, very akin to mortgage foreclosure, and that there are very limited defenses. The only defense that I'm aware of is payment.
Oh, that's a good one. Mr. Perza.
Just a question, I guess, for Mr. Lynn is, if the city objects based on the subchapter 2 section, what's the purpose of the amendment?
Just to specifically state that we are not opposing it with a broad brush, that we only I want it specifically stated that we only oppose it insofar as its application to municipal government. And I don't read the actual resolution to specifically say that. You know, I want it to be able to articulate that particular point.
Mr. Anderson.
Request permission to read from the papers, Madam President.
The what?
Request permission to read from the papers, to read the actual language that was of concern to us.
We have any concern? It's fine, Mr. Anderson.
Madam President, the resolution as originally introduced says, now it gave reasons based upon, and so I guess you can infer that it was based upon the municipal idea, but the resolution itself says, now therefore be it resolved that the mayor and council of the city of Dover stand in opposition to House Bill 230 as introduced. And then that part right there is the sort of the part that was concerned. It just wanted to be clear that the problem was the one section of the legislation, so that someone who's lobbying can't sort of cherry pick it and distort and say, look, you know, there's opposition all over the place. The City of Dover Council opposes this legislation. It just allows for more clarity.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I think,
I'm sorry, Mr. Hare.
I don't know if there's a way to do it, but I think to simplify it, what we're opposing is the fact if it passes the way it is, I don't ever have to pay my taxes again until I sell my house. Basically is what it says. As long as I make my mortgage payment, I don't have to pay my taxes until I sell my house or whatever, and then pay them then. I think that's what we're trying to get in there, that says we want that excluded, and I think that's what Mr. Lynn's motion does.
I agree. I think it's just inartfully drafted the way it is.
Anyone else? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Can you repeat the motion?
You jest. Madam Clerk.
I believe the motion is adoption of the resolution opposing only the municipal government portion.
Section 2.
And stating with particularity that we don't oppose House Bill 230 in its entirety, only those applications which are adverse to municipal government.
Is that adequate?
I just want to make sure it's important to know what we're voting on.
I understand. Any other concerns? Madam Clerk.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Persa?
Tonight.
Mr. Slavin?
Yes.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes. Motion carries 7-1. On to item number 15, letter of support for Senate Bill 191, the Downtown Development Districts Act. Mrs. Townsend, would you please explain this further?
Thank you, Madam President. Governor Markell, as part of his State of the State speech this winter, talked about a downtown development district proposal he planned to put forward, and that has now been introduced as Senate Bill 191. What that would do is set up a program for designating downtown development districts. It would be competitively selected at the state level by the Cabinet Committee on State Planning Issues. And the first round, which would happen shortly after July, there would be one downtown development district in each county, and then there would be subsequent rounds as well. The governor's budget also provides for $7 million that would be spent in these downtown development districts. And the way that it is set up is that this would be public dollars that would match up to 20% of a project. So if you have a developer who you know, the numbers don't quite work, but that extra, you know, $100,000 could get them over that hump, it could make a project viable. In terms of the selection of development districts, things such as plans in place for how the district would redevelop, and also the incentives at the local level that exist to help to augment what the state would be bringing to the table would be given a certain weight in the application process. So we do believe that Dover would be very well positioned to be one of the first 3 downtown development districts. The governor's office has specifically requested that the city support this legislation. Senator Bushweller, I know, is one of the sponsors in the Senate, and the Senate, I think it's Community Affairs Committee, is holding a hearing on Wednesday, and the governor's office was hoping to have a letter of support from the city of Dover to share with the General Assembly as this goes through the process. So what you have in your packet this evening is a letter of support in that regard.
Questions from Mrs. Townsend? Mr. Person.
Where's the money coming from for the ball grant?
State. I'm not exactly sure. It's not, as I understand it, it's not directly correlated with the gas tax, if that's the concern, because that money is for transportation projects, but, you know, obviously.
At this point, is it inarticulated as to where the money's coming from, just that they want the money to spend it on projects? I guess my concern is I don't want to inadvertently be a part of a tax increase at a different level beyond our control. And then people are less responsible for it. We ask for it, so your tax.
Right. There are 2 pieces of it. Obviously, the legislation itself creates the Downtown Development District program and the designation process. And
that part costs nothing.
And that part costs nothing. And then there's the budget. So the budget, it's not, the funding is not allocated in Senate Bill 191. The funding for it comes through the budget. So, you know, while, you know, to be successful, obviously it would need to be funded, but there's, you know, it doesn't, this specific legislation does not have the money in it.
Mr. Slavin.
One of the incentives that's been identified in this, in addition to grants, are the use of historic preservation tax credits, which are already authorized for a 10-year period, so that piece is already in place.
Right. And there's also a certain amount of streamlining that the governor's office is going to be working on the state review agencies with to help keep projects moving quickly through the state review processes.
Any other questions from Mrs. Townsend? Mr. Anderson.
Thank you. Thank you. These are questions to Mrs. Townsend, not discussion. I'll reserve them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Seeing none, what is the pleasure of Mr. Lynn?
I would move to accept staff recommendation to send a letter of support for Senate Bill 191, the Downtown Development Districts Act.
Second.
A motion's been made by Mr. Lynn, seconded by Mr. Hare. Is there any discussion on this motion? Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Madam President. When I was looking at some of this the legislation, I was concerned about the idea of where the future funding was coming from. My understanding is that there's a block of funds right now, the special monies that came in. I forget from where, and that money is what's currently being allocated, not or being recommended for allocation, and not a tax increase. Yeah, but of course, I'm not sure where future monies come from, and that gives me some concern, but we may as well take the money that's here now. So I plan to vote in support of it, and because it does not, as written, create any future obligation.
Mr. Person.
My sense is that this is going to be used as leverage to support tax increases. I think we're going to be manipulated into being used to profit. So I think if they can justify the basis on their own, come up with funds on their own, state is more the way to do that. I just don't think we should support them in their application to do that. Other than that, free money for Dover sounds good.
Madam Clerk? Oh, sorry.
Mr. Hare?
Mr. Hare, do you have your...
I don't, I see this as something positive. I mean, you've got somebody like Cashew Nuts or whatever the company is from Germany that comes over and gets a grant to build in Dover and gets all these, this is for people locally that live in Delaware, and they're going to come and they want to put something in a downtown area, and maybe it's a project that's going to cost him $200,000 to do, and he's going to get $40,000 in a grant. Why shouldn't and it could be coming from grant money wherever. I mean, I think it's important that we try to support the local people to do develop instead of some company out of Germany that's coming here and basically not spending a dime to set up in the industrial park and what the deal we give them, and then they get the money from the state to pay us. So I think it's important that we support the governor and his promotion of this, to support the people locally that can develop the downtown areas, whether it be in Dover, whether it be in Milford, wherever it is. I think that's important.
Anyone else? Madam Clerk?
Mr. Anderson?
Yeah, excuse me, yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Hersey? Mr. Slavin?
Yes.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes. Motion carries 7-1. Okay, we're on to item number 16, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, the IBEW, labor contract tentative agreement. Mr. Koenig and Mr. Mandel.
Thank you, Madam President.
Yeah, I would defer to Mr. Mandalis to go over this portion of the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Koenig. Good evening, Madam President, Mr. Mayor, and members of council and staff. My name is Glenn Mandalis. I'm with Baird Mandalis Brockstead here in Dover. I was your lead negotiator on behalf of you as a city council in the city's labor agreement with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. A new agreement should have been in place on July 1st of 2013. So as you can see, we've been at this for quite a while through negotiations, mediation, and arbitration. The primary goal in this process has been to change the trajectory of the city's long-term liabilities and post-employment benefits, and I'm bringing you a contract tonight that seeks to do those couple of objectives. It's a 4-year agreement. We discussed some of the terms of the agreement earlier today in executive session, so I won't go over all of them, but I will give some highlights for the interested public. As I mentioned, 4-year agreement. There would be no wage increase in the first year of the contract, which means that the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers will have gone 2 years with 0 wage increases. In the second year of this 4-year agreement, there would be a 3.25% general wage increase. And then in the last 2 years of this 4-year agreement, there would be a 3% wage increase in each of those years. We discussed earlier today some of the mechanics of the way those wage increases would be implemented, so I won't go through each of those now unless there's any questions about how we implement the wage increases. On healthcare, as we've been doing with other labor groups in the city and those that are not organized, we've moved now to a 15% healthcare contribution. That's a contribution toward the premiums for the healthcare, and that's at any level. So current active employees would be contributing at 15%. New employees hired on or after July 1st, 2014 would be contributing at 20% toward the healthcare premiums. In retirement, as to healthcare, current employees will maintain the status quo. That is, the retirement benefit they presently have, they will have into retirement. However, new hires will contribute 20% to the healthcare premiums in retirement. So new hires will come in at a 20% healthcare premium sharing, and they'll go into retirement at 20%. There are plenty more less significant elements to the proposed contract, many of which were discussed earlier today, so I won't go through it all now unless you have specific questions as to those proposals. As I always kind of mention when we go through these contracts, you've got a management team that I think is really dedicated to getting this right. Your city manager, Donna Mitchell, Kim Hawkins, they put in countless hours through over the last more than a year. We've been working on this contract, and it would have been very easy for them to roll over and bring you a contract that's less dedicated to your long-term liabilities than this one is. They really did a fabulous job. I was proud to work with them. So this is a contract that I'm happy to recommend to you. I think it's reasonable, and I'm asking for your approval of it this evening. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I think your question was, Mr. Mandalis.
Thank you.
What is the pleasure of council?
Move to accept the recommendation.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Versa?
Yes.
Mr. Slavin?
Yes.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison? Mrs. Williams?
Yes, motion carries unanimously. Item number 17, the final reading proposed ordinance 2014-07. The first reading of the proposed ordinance was accomplished through the council meeting, during the council meeting of April 14, 2014. Copies of all the proposed ordinances are available at the entrance of the council chambers. First, I will entertain a motion to consider the final reading by title only, which is simply to allow the waiving of the reading. A separate motion will be necessary for its adoption. What is the pleasure of council?
So moved.
Second.
Who made that motion? Mr. Hare? Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Proposed ordinance 2014-07, creating a new Chapter 52, Freedom of Information Act related to public records access and amending Appendix F, fees and fines. Are there any questions to this ordinance, on this ordinance? If there isn't, what is the pleasure of council?
Move for approval.
Second? Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made by Mr. Hutchinson, seconded by Mr. Lynn. Is there any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all in favor? I'm sorry, this is roll call.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Versa?
Yes.
Mr. Slavin?
Yes.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes, motion carries unanimously. We're at the 18th and final item. Are there any announcements by council members? Mr. Hutchinson.
If I could, going back to item number 14, opposing House Bill 230, I would only ask that we get staff to contact the League of Local Government. They ask for their support as well.
Mayor Bono.
Thank you, Madam President. As we end tonight's meeting, I just want to say publicly to the staff of the city, particularly the city clerk's office and the remainder of the staff, including the police department, that this last week has been difficult on all of them. The city clerk's office is, I don't know whether you realize this or not, has had to redo agendas about 10 times. And I want to publicly thank them for their hard work. And I also want to express my thanks to Chief Burnett and my support of his administration and my willingness to listen to their suggestions and bring them forward to council in the interim. You've all acted like professionals, and to the members of council tonight, I want to say thanks for your support in the past and look forward to it in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We stand adjourned.
Wait a minute, one more.
Sorry,
More
Mr.
thing.
Hare.
Two things real quick. Just following up on the city clerk's office so all the council members know, They do like chocolate. And also,
And they don't need it.
for those who don't realize it, Mr. Koenig's assistant, Yvonne Martin, was nominated as administrative professional through the chamber, within the Chamber of Commerce, and she did win. So, when you see her, you should
Madam President,
congratulate.
one item I
Thank you.
forgot to mention too. This Saturday, remind everyone that it is Dover Days. The parade starts at 9 o'clock, and there'll be lots of festivities downtown, so each of you that can come and take part in it, it'll be a great deal.
You're not over my mind.